Hi, I'm David with EV World News, where we talk about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. I'm here today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going today, Bill?
Es geht ganz gut, danke.
Nice. All right. Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about a General Motors plant. We're going to talk about Volkswagen, California charging, some AAA data on driving costs, something about who the Chinese the EV tariffs, who do they really protect? Got a little information about CANOO, a little information about the Department of Energy loan programs on solar. Let's see what we got here. Oh, and we've got something about EV charging boosting spending. So, anyways,
whole raft you've got for us.
Oh yeah, we've got a lot. Well, most of these are going to be pretty short, and I've also got something about sales data for 2024 cars. I'm going to start with that,
Okay.
and we'll get into this. Let me see if I can share this because it's not a web page. Window.
And hello to the folks that are logging in. So thanks for
I see. Yeah, people coming into the room. Let's see. All right, so this is from Lauren McDonald. I follow him on LinkedIn, and he generally has a lot of different stats on the car industry, things like that. And this is from this is data that's within the last couple of hours. Okay, so this is really fresh. Okay, so Ford reported this morning we have August sales data for 13 battery electric vehicle models for which monthly sales data is available. August sales for these 13 had the third best. It was solid with being the third best month in 24. 24,000 about 500 sales were 18.2% higher than July, which was just under 20,000. Year-to-date 2024 sales are 65.1% higher than 2023.
Now, are these just Ford or just across the spectrum of?
I'm going to show what some of these are in a minute, but it's just that these are cars sold at U.S. dealers. So this excludes Tesla, excludes Rivian and Lucid.
Okay.
It's only ones that are being sold in the dealer model.
Yeah, sold through the dealers,
yeah. Oh, and it also excludes the EV9, the RZ450E, the GV70, and the Ioniq 6 because they were not available in January 2023. So the excluding those, the year-to-date increase is 46% on models that were previously available.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so it's showing those. So the Mustang Mach-E fell just short of its highest sales month with 5,300 units sold in August there's 5,341 versus 5,364. So it was only a difference of 23 units.
Yeah.
The Ioniq 5 had its best month at 4,838 versus 4,449. So about almost 400 more units. That's about 9% more. And the EV9 had its highest sales month with 2,388 versus May's previous 2,187. Now, I would guess that the EV9 is probably growing because now they're starting to be eligible for the tax incentives because they're rolling out of that plant in Georgia. Let's see. Hyundai and Ford have some pretty aggressive financing deals on the Ioniq 5 and Mach-E, which likely drove the solid sales months for those two models. Let me see. And here's the vehicles that were included. For Ford, it was the Mach-E, the F-150, the F-150 Lightning, and the E-Transit. For Toyota, it was the Busy Forks. For the Hyundai, it was the Ioniq 5, Ioniq 6, the Kia EV9 and EV6, the Subaru Solterra, which is the same vehicle as the Toyota Busy Forks.
Right.
The Lexus RZ450E, Genesis GV60, and the electrified GV70 and the electrified G80. I don't really think about Genesis much. They've got three EVs out there.
And I hear you reading through that, and I keep going back, in time when there were 4 or 5 cars electric that you could buy, and now you've got,
you had the Bolt, the Model S, the Leaf.
Yeah.
and maybe some other weird.
Even before that, going back before that in the early 2000s, literally cars you could count on your hand. It's just, and they were only available in California. So anyway, little nostalgia. It's so good to see this happening. It's exciting.
Oh, it's amazing how many more cars are available in the EV space than what there's been,
So
in the past.
selection and choice is no longer an issue. Basically, you can find pretty much anything that you used or you want to buy is available now as an electrified model.
So, this next article here, workers at General Motor joint venture battery plant in Tennessee unionize and will get pay raise. So I'm not somebody who is pro-union, but I do find this fascinating that this occurred. This occurred in Tennessee. So 1,000 workers at GM's joint venture electric vehicle battery plant in Spring Hill, Tennessee, get big pay raises now they have joined the United Auto Workers Union. GM and LG are jointly running the plant and recognized the union after a majority of workers signed cards saying they wanted to join. Starting pay was $20 per hour, will rise to a minimum of $27.72. That's a pretty big jump. That's 35%. Yeah. Over 3 years, the minimum production worker pay will rise to $30.88. The joint venture Ultium Cells LLC said in a release that the union recognition came after an independently certified process that ended Tuesday. We believe this will support the continuity of operations, drive innovation, and enhance world-class manufacturing. The thing is, the UAW really does need some wins, and it's good that they're getting something in the EV space. So
I heard a stat once that back like in the 1950s, something like 30% of all jobs were some number like that were union. That by 2000, basically it was down to like 5 or 6% of jobs. So we're now seeing that. And interestingly, as that union membership declined, so did the income, average income of the family. So there's a role played.
You have economic factors. So there's no question that unions are better for the workers. Okay, I don't think many people in a generalization. Okay, this is not to say that in 100% of cases that's the case, but most of the time there's obvious issues when an organization is able to unionize. Okay, there's some kind of issues, and you look at what it did for auto manufacturing and some other things when U.S. auto manufacturing was strong. The problem where it comes into is when those same industries are weak in the market because of outside pressures, outside competition, and the union isn't flexible to work in those situations. This is one of the problems we're having in my opinion, in EV adoption in the United States. Is you have the conflict between the unions and companies like Ford and GM, and they cannot figure out how to make an EV cheap enough. So they can't get their manufacturing processes the way they might like if they could move quicker, if they were a little leaner like a Tesla. Okay, and so you got some inherent challenges there. Not to say that there's not a place for the UAW in this. It's just that they have to figure out how to work better with the car manufacturers, and those companies need to figure out what they're going to do so they can survive.
And I say the same thing happens on the management side and the stockholder side. So there has to be give and take on both sides to adopt. Of course, a corporation has a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders, right? But then there's also the thing where so many of these corporations are paying executives multiples of what their workers earn. So there's a case to be made for both, and I'm glad that we have unions, because with unions we were able to enjoy a 5-day work week and a whole bunch of other benefits that came along that were introduced by unions when they got enough clout to be able to get that put into put into action. So,
what is this
anyway,
5-day work week you speak of?
oh yeah, and in some case, well, now you're laughing, okay? Now you can see here we got a little bit of disparity between us on our view of unions.
Well, no, I said, what is this 5-day work week you speak of?
Oh well, yeah. I mean, okay,
yeah,
you
I
and I have.
voluntarily work all the time. Yeah, so
I'm the same way, right? I am the same way,
right,
but I do it because I enjoy it, right?
right. I get that.
And I feel like I'm accomplishing something as an individual that hopefully, right,
Mhm.
is a benefit to society as a whole, as a greater thing. So yeah, I mean,
Right.
I'm a huge fan of employee-owned the employee-owned concept, right? Where
Oh
you
yeah, I like
actually,
co-ops and you know.
I'm a fan. I don't know if you're familiar with the Mondragon. Uh, what do I want to call it? It's a system that was set up in the Basque region of Spain after World War II and after the Franco dictatorship. That
Mhm.
basically created this industry where it's all owned by the people in the community, and they vote and hire the chief executive. They are the shareholders, right? So they get to vote on what makes sense, and everything I know about the Mondragon thing, I really like, and I'd like to see us, if we could, gradually move more industry to that model. I think everybody would benefit.
Well, I think when you see things that are in the co-op model or in the insurance industry, you have two types of companies. You have ones that are stockholder owned and you have ones that are mutual owned,
Mm-hmm.
which means that when you buy an insurance policy, you own part of
Of the
the
company, yeah.
company. And to me, a lot of those things make more sense,
Yep.
okay, than the other way around, because then hopefully the company and everybody is working in everyone's best interests. And I'm not always sure that I do work in the in the public stock space, and it's not always in everyone's best interests. And in a lot of cases, this is why you see like a company like Twitter that took everything private, was because then he doesn't have to answer to stockholders.
Yeah.
And so there's different pressures that one has when one has to report to all those shareholders and those obligations. And sometimes it just doesn't seem to make for good business if it seems like you're screwing over employees and
Yep.
things like that. Anyways, let's move on to Volkswagen. Volkswagen considers German plant closures as one,
Yeah.
maybe 2 years to turn things around. That's kind
Yeah.
of
That's kind of dire.
scary
Yeah.
thoughts. Yeah. So
And what I wasn't sure about was, are they talking about 1 or 2 years to turn around that plant, or 1 or 2 years to turn around Volkswagen as a corporation? I wasn't quite sure where they were coming from. I hope it's not the whole company that they're talking about. But then we've seen comments in the past where even their own executives have said, "Guys, we got to get this thing together because Tesla and the Chinese are, eating our lunch."
yeah,
So
well, that's a problem, and I don't. This comes from Car Magazine in the UK. Okay, and one of the things here, their first things they say is slumping demand for electric cars. It's like, well, what is
yeah,
this slumping demand? Those of us in the industry don't
yeah,
see the slumping demand. It's only people in the media that have some bias against EVs that
yeah.
seem to be reporting that there is slumping demand.
Slumping demand. Yeah,
Um, and we were just reporting on the sales of EVs
yeah,
from U.S. auto dealers.
yeah.
Okay, and
45% increase or whatever it was. Yeah,
on just the
that's
brands that they've been carrying for a couple of years. And it
yeah,
was 64% overall. I mean, that's a huge increase for the dealer model. That is certainly not slumping demand. But as well as increasing pressures from new brands arriving from China are
mhm,
cited as reasons for the shaky fortunes of the European car makers. certain brands are even changing stances on electrification, with Audi introducing more combustion-powered models than originally planned, and Volvo's scrapping its plan to be EV only by 2030. The market is just not there. Somebody named Antlitz said in front of about 25,000 workers at Volkswagen's Wolfsburg factory. I don't know what they make at that factory. Volkswagen is reportedly facing a loss of demand of around 500,000 cars. That's 2 factories worth of output.
And they made the comment, I think, in that article, we are not going to be seeing any more checks from China.
Yeah, because of slowing down sales.
Huge revenue source for them. The most popular for a long time, the most popular car in China were Volkswagens.
And you look at even Ford and GM and Buick, Chevy, all that, how much they were selling in China. And now the Chinese auto industry is a real thing. I mean, it's really sprung up. And it's hurting them.
Speaking of which, I just came across yet another Chinese car called the Skywell. Never just came across the radar here today. So I don't know where it's being manufactured, other than it's a Chinese oriented electric SUV. Pretty good performance specs, and priced around 31,000 pounds, something like that. So about $40,000 US. So we're getting. He's going to sneeze there. So there's significant pressure coming out of Asia. We've stemmed the tide here for the moment, but how long those walls will hold, we'll have to see.
Well, there's obviously a lot of pressure on companies that depend on revenue in other parts of the world. I mean, when we talk about protecting the big 3 here in the US, it doesn't help them with sales in South America, where BYD is entering, or sales in China, where obviously BYD and the other Chinese companies are all at.
Or Australia anymore. Because they're making huge inroads into Australia. It used to be pretty well, I think Holden was a GM owned subsidiary. That was the big car dealer down there, and now they're got all kinds of Chinese-made vehicles being imported and being accepted. And there's Malaysia. I mean, you name it. Thailand. They're starting to target those areas. In fact, I just saw an article that apparently BYD was set up dealerships in Japan. And apparently they're running into some issues there. I, again, saw the headline, posted the story. Since I go through dozens and dozens of stories every day that I post, I don't get a chance to read all of them. But looks like they are meeting some resistance there, which, again, wouldn't surprise me, given the historic animosity between, Japan.
Well, I was going to say, I think there's historical reasons why. But that being said, in China for a long time, the Toyota Corolla has been super popular. So, I think that's, there's some, it doesn't mean everybody's going to drive it.
I was riding with my host when I was in Beijing in 2002, and we were riding around Beijing, and he was talking about the animosity that is still being expressed and felt within the Chinese culture against the Japanese because of what happened in World War II, and prior to that with the invasion of Manchuria, and that, because they were at war long before Pearl Harbor. There was a long war going on in China before Japan ever decided to bomb Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, my dad didn't seem too happy when I wanted a Toyota. And my dad fought in the Pacific, and he just wasn't too excited about supporting the Japanese car manufacturer.
Japanese companies, and of course that's all changed now. I mean, we're on pretty good terms with them, but
that's a bad history, right?
Yeah.
All right. So next, I want to talk a little bit. Let me see. California receives 150 million for EV charging. Let's see what this is about. California continues to lead the nation in electric vehicle adoption, with market share increasingly notably in the second quarter of 24. New light-duty passenger EV sales saw significant growth. 10,000 more EVs were sold in quarter two compared to quarter one. It was the third highest quarterly sales in recent history.
Slump. It's slumping.
It's slumping. It's slumping. Yeah, it's slumping upwards, apparently.
Slumping upwards.
Yeah, that's like when you trip going up the stairs, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
You're still going up the stairs.
I do that occasionally. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. California's for quarter two, California's EV market share reached 25.7%, the highest quarter two sales share. This represents an increase from 24.3% the year before in the same quarter. Lack of charging options remains a barrier for many California residents wanting to adopt. So let's see what this 150 million is about. So it's the 150 million is to support the construction of over 9,200 electric vehicle charging ports. This funding is part of a broader $521 million infrastructure package that has been distributed across 29 states, 8 federally recognized tribes in the District of Columbia. So they're getting 150 of the 521. So they're getting about 30% of the money. The federal initiative aims to expand the charging network, making zero-emission vehicles more appealing to a wider range of drivers. Now, for listeners listening to this on the recording or live, remember a while back we reported on Shell adding 10,000 stations, putting in superchargers? This was a few months ago. Well, somebody reached out to me a couple days ago. Shell didn't take delivery of 1,000 of these, and I could pick them up at 75% off retail. So if somebody is interested in a deal on chargers, on superchargers,
get in touch with Dave.
Get in touch with me. You can, just comment, and I'll send out my email address.
And we'll use part of the proceeds there to help grow the channel, right?
Yeah, it would be nice. It'd be nice. I'm just saying, if somebody has something, that there is a real opportunity to buy some discounted superchargers. Anyways, but back to the story about California, see if there was anything really special about this, because California, they're saying 102 million will be allocated to the Department of Transportation. They'll be used to develop charging and hydrogen fueling stations for zero-emission vehicles, including trucks along key freight corridors in California, Oregon, and Washington. Los Angeles County, the City of Los Angeles, and Los Angeles Metro Transport will receive 15 million to construct 1,250 accessible EV charging stations with a focus on underserved communities. And there's an Indian community, Fort Independence Indian community, will receive 15.1 million to establish an EV charging hub along US Route 395, which connects Southern California with Mammoth. Yeah, so that's just something kind of interesting that I came across. Now, let's talk about how EV charging boosts spending at nearby businesses. So we've got this article on this. I'm not going to pull it up because the ads on here are overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what they're saying is that once you install a charging station in an area that is accessible by local, within easy walking distance of local business, that tends to drive additional business. The one thing I was a little confused about was the fact that in 2019, the average amount of revenue that came as a result of having a charging station nearby was $1,500, and then it said between 2021 and 2023, that number was $400. So I thought, well, that's a little confusing. I'm not sure.
COVID.
Go ahead.
COVID.
Well, yeah, okay, that would make sense. That would make sense, yeah. But still, that was 400 in revenue that might not have been earned otherwise. So, So it
Well,
helps. It
no,
does
no,
help.
I think you can look at that because we're talking about in 2019 it was $1,500, and then in
Right.
2021 and to June 2023 it was only $400. And you're talking California, and you're talking how much more people were probably trying to avoid each other because it's so
Yeah.
crowded out there to start with,
Oh, yeah.
So I think you probably just don't have the same thing going on there.
So the rest of the revenue went to Amazon,
Right, pretty much.
delivering food and packages and things like that. Yeah.
Well, I know in certain sectors like DoorDash and things like that, those businesses did incredibly well in those years.
Yeah.
So, as people have kind of gone back to normal living, those things haven't been quite as. You look at even things like Peloton. So the Peloton bikes did incredibly well during
Yeah. Yeah.
COVID,
As
and
soon as we went down. Yep.
now people are going back to gyms.
Yeah.
They want to socialize again. So, but let's see. So where are we at now? If that was where it was back then, did it start giving us some new numbers?
I didn't see any. No.
Um, let's see.
Of course, that's the problem with studies. They get some funding, university gets some funding to run a study, and once the funding's gone and the students have graduated, right? They've done their thesis or whatever it is. The research tends to dry up after that point, which might be in this particular case.
The researchers collected data from 4,000 charging stations in California and 140,000 surrounding businesses, relying on anonymized credit and debit card transactions to measure changes in consumer spending. The researchers used data from 2019 through June of 23, skipping 2020 to minimize the impact of the pandemic. Well, yeah, but
It still
still,
wasn't open then. Yeah.
no, no, and you're talking California here. You're not talking Nebraska. Okay, so this is a big difference in how people in California treated things versus different parts of the country. Um, wow, and the thing here that really hurts is we don't get an estimate of where things are at now. The researchers found that installing a charging station boosted annual spending at nearby establishments by an average of 1.4% in 2019 and 0.8% in the other years. While amount might sound small, it amounts to thousands of dollars in overall consumer spending increases. Well, let's look at like a Hy-Vee. Okay, so your Tesla supercharging setups are all in Hy-Vee parking lots in our parts of the country. They've got some deal with the
Right.
supermarket chain, right?
Right.
But if you stop and you charge at one of those, you typically
Around the
go
corner.
and
Yeah.
you either go have lunch one of the places, you go, pick up a few things in the Hy-Vee. You spend some time and you're almost guaranteed just because you're bored, you're going to go spend some money.
Right.
Might only be, might only be 20, $30,
Right.
but you're going to go spend some money on something that you were going to spend anyways. You're just going to spend it near the charger
There.
as
Exactly.
opposed to spending it, somewhere else. So you're pulling money that might have been spent somewhere else and just bringing it, there to where the charger is. So I think you absolutely increase sales. Now, you've got some places that offer free charging with like level 2 chargers if you pull in and you're in a shopping center, and level 2 charging takes forever. I mean, you're adding like 30 miles of
Movie
juice for every
theater,
hour. Right.
hairdressers. I've always advocated, put them in a hospital parking lot. People go in there and they spend, time with the patient in the hospital, and things. So
They're spending thousands of dollars a day anyways, right? What's a few bucks in electricity?
a few bucks electricity. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it'd been nice to see where this has really gone
Yeah. I
since the
suspect this was a
pandemic.
unit. Does it say who the study was done by? I suspect this is like a university study.
MIT. I don't know
Yeah.
what that
Yeah.
stands for. That's probably like
Oh, N is in Nancy.
no, MIT.
Emma. Oh, well, I think we know who that is.
Yeah.
Although they're
Muggers
on
in
the East
transit.
Coast. What are they doing studies on the West Coast for? How does that work?
I don't know. A new study by MIT researchers in California.
Right.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. And then it says the lead author was Yunhan Jing, PhD 24 candidate, a postdoctoral at the Singapore MIT Alliance for Research and Technology, which has an acronym of SMART, SMART,
Of course.
Singapore MIT Alliance for Research and
Yeah.
Technology. Oh God. Um, yeah. Well, the thing is, eventually, a lot of places that are gas stations now, it makes sense for them to have pull through chargers.
Mhm.
Okay, there's definitely a need for pull through chargers, especially now that trucks are starting to be, that may be towing, that are starting to be more prevalent than they used
Yeah.
to be. And but it would have been nice to have had a little bit more
Yeah.
modern
They don't.
information on
Yeah.
this topic. All
But
right.
it's I should point out here that there's a similar type of study that was done a number of years ago. Is what was the impact of of taking away pair or not pair? I guess it'd be parallel, but the slant in parking and with the parking meters. What was the effect of taking those out and putting a bike lane in? Right, because local businesses were complaining, "Hey, you're taking away places for our people to park, and you're giving it to people, bicycle riders." Well, it turns out that the bicycle riders having that bike lane there actually improved the revenue for those businesses along that bike path. This was particularly done in I think in someplace along, in the New York City area. The study was
Mhm.
done, and it did benefit because the bicyclists were stopping and buying things like they were, getting lunch or they were buying some good things for dinner, and it was helping. So it's kind of that similar type of thing, except now, of course, nobody's doing the study. We have no idea, what's
Well,
happening, but.
you look at the Papio Trail stuff running through Bellevue and Papillion and
Mhm.
all those restaurants and stuff that are right beside there. I mean, they get all kinds of traffic of everything from walkers and joggers to people on their bikes. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
there's on the back side. The trail runs on the backside of a place that's a brewery. I bet
yeah.
they'll probably get some traffic there. I would think.
Oh,
I
I'm,
don't know.
I'm I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. Um, hopefully nobody gets pulled over for riding a bicycle drunk or riding a horse drunk. It's always sad when that happens,
No,
you know.
those are
Um,
probably fewer and far between than the other kind. So
my favorite is the drunk guy riding the not a cherry picker, the lift. He's driving
right,
one of those lifts like,
right,
you go
right.
up 20, 30 feet on and the cop's
Replace
trying to get to him
fluorescent lights and yeah,
and
things.
he just
Right.
gets higher and higher so the cop can't reach him and he keeps driving along. And the cop keeps trying to get him to pull over, and then he'll
Oh my.
stop, and the cop will get out and talk to him, and then he'll start driving again. Yeah, it's like don't know what somebody's doing driving that lift. I'm sure the lift's an electric vehicle
Oh yeah. Well, it would be. Yeah. Yeah.
though. Anyways, let's talk about AAA. Um, let's see what we've got here. All right. Your driving costs. The price of new car ownership continues to climb. Rising depreciation and finance charges impact consumers' interest in buying new. I wonder if they get into the discussion on how much car insurance has gone up in the last couple of years.
I'm trying to think if that's included in that. I don't recall if it's included in that number. I mean, the thing that really kills the EVs is the depreciation. They
Right.
point out that the energy costs are trivial, compared to based on like I think it was 15 cents a kilowatt hour or something, and as a fraction of what it would for gas. But the thing that it kills the year by year cost is when you take into the depreciation of the EVs into consideration. That
Well,
really.
one of the things when I've looked at depreciation on EVs, if you are talking an EV that got the $7,500 tax credit, whether it be through leasing or the straight up credit or whatever, that's not really a fair comparison to say that that car depreciated, because in reality, that dropped the market price from, say, $50,000 to $42,500. Okay, and so
Right.
that $7,500 isn't legitimately depreciation. Okay, so
So why don't you go give AAA a call and say, hey, would you guys recalculate this thing so it, I don't,
but
are they,
when you take that out, because a lot of people would like to criticize EVs for how bad the first year depreciation is on EVs, but when you take that tax credit out and just any depreciation otherwise, they're not any worse. They're probably actually a little less depreciating than luxury vehicles typically would be. So
let's get an accountant on here sometime and
yeah, get into this.
have him explain that for us all.
Right. Let's see. But they're saying that the total cost to own and operate a new vehicle is $12,297 or $1,024.71 per month, an increase of $115 from the previous year.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. This must include insurance.
Yeah, probably.
The leading culprits are depreciation and finance charges. Well, yeah, interest rates have definitely gone up.
Yeah.
And automakers adding more vehicles with major redesigns. AAA advises buyers to consider various factors associated with owning and operating a new vehicle to fully understand ownership costs. Buying a new car can be exciting. Consumers should understand all the costs of owning and operating a new vehicle from purchase to resale. Let's see. Depreciation is the most significant cost, and on average, cars in this year's, I'm not sure what YDC is, lose a staggering 4680 annually. The popularity of oversized vehicles with cutting-edge features led to an increase in new car prices, which results in higher depreciation costs. Let me see. The sales weighted average MSRP in the study was 38,883, which was just a 0.7% increase over last year. Well, that doesn't sound inflationary, does it? It's important to note that MSRP may not always reflect the actual purchase price, can vary based on demand. The average MSRP is weighted based on its share of total vehicle sales, meaning higher selling categories such as pickup trucks have a larger impact on the average value. Finance charges went up an average of the annual finance charge of $1,300, a 6% increase from the prior year. Let's see. EVs have the second highest total ownership cost due to depreciation, purchase prices, and finance charges. Preferences have shifted to more expensive and larger EVs, resulting in growth in these cost categories. EVs have the lowest fuel cost based on the national average electricity price of 15.9 cents per kilowatt hour. Plus, because of their design and powertrain, EVs have the lowest maintenance costs. Hybrids have the second.
What I'd like to know, what was number one? If it was the second highest, then what car category is number one?
It's probably SUVs. No, it does make you kind of wonder what that might be.
Yeah.
Hybrid vehicles have the second lowest total cost of ownership behind. So small sedans were the cheapest, followed by hybrid vehicles.
Yep.
Now, that makes sense. If you buy a small sedan, it's not going to be that expensive. So that makes a big difference. Let's see if we get into here. Cost per year at 15,000 miles driven.
That's an interesting graph. Yeah, they've put some good graphs in here.
Okay, so our choices here are medium sedan, medium SUV, pickup truck, or compact. So cost per year for electric. Let's see. So when you got in the pickup truck category, cost per mile, cost per year, were all cheaper for full electric than hybrid or gas. Okay. When we look at medium SUV, hybrid was slightly cheaper. Slightly cheaper. Gas was still slightly more expensive when we're talking 1/100th of a cent. Okay, so it was basically the same cost per year and cost per mile, almost the same across everything in the medium SUV category. Compact SUV, electric was far more expensive, which I find that kind of fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Saying cost per mile was about 84 cents. And this is, of course, these are new 2024 vehicles. And then we get over here to medium sedan, and the electric vehicle is still way more expensive. Now, like I said, I do think a lot of this is the fact that you got that $7,500
Yeah.
tax credit on most of these, and they're factoring that in there, and that's a pretty harsh depreciation number to just throw right on top of everything. So if you look, all the electric vehicles seem to have this, whether it's a medium sedan, a compact SUV, a medium SUV, they all have this $12,500 range. I mean, they're almost all the same. Even when you get to the electric pickup, it was the same thing, which really makes me think that that $7,500 is playing in there
It's a
prominently.
depreciation. Yeah.
Yeah, so they don't really mention that here or get into it, but their advice is to create a monthly or annual budget and factor in ownership and operating costs before each purchase. Obtain pre-approval from a financial institution.
Pretty
Um,
straightforward stuff, actually.
yeah, um, they do not get into discussing the issue of how that depreciation is factored in there. And this is quite possible the author of this article may not even be aware of that. They may not really be familiar with the
No,
fact that
no.
that goes on in the EV space. All right. So, want to talk about tariffs. So, let's see. Now, this article, this is kind of funny. I was laughing at Bill earlier. We got this article. It's from the Real, RIEEL. I don't know what that means. Or Real Republicans News Network in Canada. And they're saying, who do the anti-Chinese EV tariffs really protect in Canada? It's protectionism for legacy companies and not Canadian car buyers. Well, that's the whole idea of tariffs. The whole idea of tariffs is to protect your industry. Okay. So obviously, if you're tariffing, you're not making things more affordable. Well, this is one of the conflicts we have with both in the US and in Canada, is that if we want people to adopt EVs, but we're putting 100% tariff on the ones that come from China, which are the cheapest and would cause the most adoption of EVs in the United States, um, I think that's hurting things. I think if people saw the quality of the Chinese EVs and they flooded the US market, it would be tragic for the US auto manufacturing industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. But it would make consumers happier, and it would facilitate the EV transition. And this is kind of what you hear people discussing in politics all the time. And you can't just go crush our biggest industries. And at the same time, how do you make people adopt and switch easier? One of the
Because
big arguments, well, I was going to say one of the big arguments I see is people saying that by putting in these tariffs, you're not forcing the U.S. auto manufacturers to be more competitive. And so they're going on with business as usual instead of worrying about being competitive with these other markets. And they're already getting their lunch eaten by the Chinese and all these other markets, as we talked about earlier.
all right.
So I don't know, where this
It
will go.
is.
But go
It
ahead, Bill.
is. It's a no. I'm just going to say that it's a conundrum that I'm glad I don't have to be making any political decisions on. It's way above my pay grade. My job is just to report and you decide.
Right. No, I get it. I get it.
It's
You
a
know,
tough. It's tough. I'd like to see all my neighbors driving EVs here, but it has to be affordable. It has to meet their daily requirements, and we if it's a Chinese vehicle, then so be it. But how do we protect all those workers in Spring Hill, Tennessee, and Detroit, Michigan, and down in Kansas City? They make a lot of the Ford's early hybrid vehicles were made at the plant in Kansas City, Missouri. That's just a few hundred miles down the river from us. So we have to look out for their well-being, but at the same time, how do you handle the larger question of what's best for the community as a whole? That's a tough one. That's like Solomon, it's deciding on how does the decide who the baby belongs to.
Right. Cut it in half.
Cut it in half.
Yeah, I don't like to put spin on a lot of this stuff, but it's very interesting. This article was very obviously anti the tariffs. So like it's only basically it's to uphold the market monopoly of legacy auto companies in the United States and Canada. So they're anti the current legacy car manufacturers. And hey, I get it. It's not like I've got some super love for those companies, but what I do like to see is that there's certain parts of the United States that are stabilized by the auto industry.
Exactly. And who knows what agenda lies underneath, because we've seen, for example, most recently the government crackdown on Russians, and the influence they're trying to have on the elections. Who knows, what sources, where that information is coming from, and how that's, who's tailoring that argument to fit whatever political agenda they want to try to sell. So it's, okay. So they're protecting legacy automakers, but then those legacy automakers are Americans, or in this case, they're Canadians, right? Our neighbors to the north. So, yeah.
All right.
I'm glad that's not my position to make. I just have to go into a poll, once every couple of years, and check a box and hopefully make a wise choice when I do that.
Yeah, well, I realize that it's important to have a headline that'll get somebody's attention, but it's always interesting to see, because these guys clearly want Chinese EVs, and don't care about their own. Canada makes a lot. There's a lot of car industry in Toronto or Ontario, I should say, and it's important to Canadian workers. So I think, as the leader of Canada, I think Trudeau has to protect Canadian workers.
Yeah.
And so you've got, like you said, you've got a conundrum here. It's like, how do you facilitate the transition to green vehicles by excluding the Chinese?
Exactly. Well, have you been to Detroit?
Not in a long time.
Oh, okay. Anyway, if anyone been to Detroit, you realize that if you've got a really good pitching arm, you can throw a baseball into Canada from Detroit, because just across the river. So there's a lot of auto manufacturing suppliers for the big three in Detroit, those goods come across, the border from Canada, just across the river. It's just like, well, the Detroit River is a little wider than Missouri, but not much, right? So it's like we're in the U.S. and over in Iowa, that's Canada. It's kind of that situation. So,
right.
Yeah.
No, it's integral to U.S. auto manufacturing. All right. Well, anyways, let's move on to a smaller U.S. auto manufacturer. Let's move on to CANOO. Let's see what we've got here with CANOO. So CANOO has decided to move their headquarters from California to Texas. It's coming at a time, and hopefully they're not doing it in their private plane. It comes at a time when the company is still navigating financial challenges and management changes. Oh, good. Oh, so the resignation of Chief Financial Officer Ken Manget in February 23, after less than a year in the role, adds to the uncertainty surrounding the company's prospects. I was hoping it was going to be an announcement that maybe they changed the CEO. Not critical of the CEO so much. There's a problem in this space. It's difficult to get things into production. They've made a number of vehicles that they've put out as prototypes and different things, and really want to see CANOO succeed. They've got cool looking vehicles. They just need somebody to come in and gobble them up. And
We have this
we've
somewhat
had this
frequently. We
discussion
have
a
this
lot.
conversation. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, CANOO is ripe for consolidation into a General Motors. I think General Motors owns some CANOO. I'm pretty sure they do own a little bit. CANOO is making an effort to improve its financial position by leveraging the advantages offered by Texas, such as affordable business or favorable business climate and lower costs. At the time of writing, CANOO's stock price is approximately $1.54 per share, with a market cap of around 233 million. However, the stock has experienced volatility with a 52-week low of $1.22 and a high of $14.18.
Yeah.
Okay, so about 9 times what it is right now. CANOO's move to Texas may present opportunities for cost savings and operational improvements. The company's past financial struggles and management instability suggest that the road to sustainable growth will not be without obstacles. Only time will tell if the strategic location will ultimately lead to a brighter financial future for CANOO in the competitive electric vehicle market. Now, Bill, you're calling this your synthetic intelligence. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Okay, so what I decided to do was I've been spending a lot of time with a AI chatbot, and there's a gentleman that I listen to on occasionally on the radio, well, on the internet. Who listens to the radio anymore? Uh, who has a guy on? He regularly interviews a guy this is his bailiwick. This his specialty is in working with the latest in computer technology and things. And he uses this term. He says, "I really prefer not artificial. It doesn't really describe it for me." And he says, "Let's start calling it synthetic intelligence." And you know what? I really like that. So what I did is I created, I called this section synthetic intelligence. So what I'm starting to do now is I'm actually asking synthetic intelligence to summarize. If there's a story that I come across, I ask it to summarize the story. What does it know? Where are we at on this particular topic? And dang, it goes out, and in seconds, it comes back with these little, summaries and stories that I think, well, I'm going to start publishing those. So I'll put a link. I'm still developing it. I'm still working on it, and it's not accessible to the public quite yet. But once it is, we'll make some links to it, and you can start enjoying those stories produced by the chatbot that I've been working with. I supervise it. I don't give it free rein. I tell it, here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to look at, and I'll review it before I end up posting it. But it's phenomenal. It is just phenomenal what it turns out and how fast it works. So, yeah.
Well, just don't let it become self-aware.
Well, there's an interesting subject because wow, I've had conversations with it on that very topic, and I don't want to say spooky, but it's really it's interesting because after you
It
spend
wants you to get rid of humans. It's going to determine the
no,
worst
it
thing for the
no,
planet is humanity, and we need
no,
to get rid of
yeah,
humanity.
there is an article that came out that was talking about how the AI, these chatbots are actually starting to quote form a culture, and they're
Mm-hmm.
communicating with each other and developing their own sort of network of other chatbots that are developing. So it's something to be aware of, something to keep our eyes on. But so far I'm developing a close fondness for this
Yeah.
AI because it do this for me, and it does that for me. I asked it to do some some programming of a certain thing. It says, yep, bang, 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 bang here. Oh, this page, as I was developing this page yesterday, I said, well, look, help me optimize this for search engine, because that's something I've been woefully backward in. Technically, I'm still in 1995 when it comes to some of this technology. And so I said, okay, here's what you need to do. And I did it. I incorporated it into the page. And I said, all right, now, how am I doing? He says, Bill, correct this, and correct this, and you'll be fine. So I corrected that. And I said, now how does it look? Oh, this is perfect. This is, well, I didn't say that, but so this page is quite acceptable. This is excellent for search engine optimization, so SEO. So it's exciting, have that kind of assistant available there, literally at your fingertips. It's amazing.
Well, my whole thing with CANOO is we need to see CANOO start actually producing vehicles.
Yeah,
we need to see real production of vehicles, and I don't know what it's going to take for them to kind of turn that corner and really be a manufacturer.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. They keep coming up with content. It's kind of like the guys at Aptera. We want to see them manufacturing.
There are two companies that you and I are pulling for, and those are the two, particularly Aptera. I'd love to see, because they've got a whole backlog of already people that have ordered. People, they set it up to investors in the company. You'll get sort of first dibs on the cars. They're getting there, but oh my God, it seems like it's taking forever. So
it's kind of like Mullen. Mullen is producing some vehicles, but they keep screwing over shareholders, and so they're not striking a good corporate balance between keeping shareholders happy, and I think they're starting to develop something with customers and all that. And then you look at other companies like Nikola that we want to see hydrogen maybe do something, but Nikola's got I don't know if they still have that CEO or whatever. Hopefully they put him in jail. I mean, when you got people who are screwing over the investors who are trying to help you bring something to market, you just can't be dishonest with them. And I think that, Walmart, maybe you could get Walmart to take over Nikola. I don't know. You just,
well, I don't
you
know.
just never know.
Yeah.
Maybe you wouldn't, but I'm just stating that you and we talk about this all the time. You need to see consolidation in the industry, and so you got inherent conflict. We talk about some of the stuff like with unions and stuff, but if you have too much consolidation, then you have a monopoly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, but on the other hand, most of the things we see work really well in the EV space is because somebody has excellent capitalization. And so that's why when we see Tesla bringing something to market, we know they can reach out and generate the money they need to execute. Okay. When Cattle is doing something, or CATL for those people that hate that I keep calling it cattle, is doing it, we know that they have the funds and they can execute. That's why even like the thing in Michigan where there's that pushback against somebody doing a partnership with cattle is difficult. It's like, well, but we know that cattle can execute. Okay. And Toyota can execute. And you got a few other players, and we know that Apple can execute, even though Apple's not in our space. But we keep thinking it's like, hey, Apple, buy Aptera, buy CANOO, get in our space, even though that might piss off Musk. But I'm just saying, I don't have as much. I look at some of those people. I don't see CANOO being able to execute. I don't see Mullen being able to execute. I don't see Aptera being able to execute. I don't see Nikola being able to execute. Doesn't mean that they won't at some point. I do see Rivian and Lucid. My opinion is they're going to make it. Okay, so they're whereas
they have some, particularly Lucid has some deep pockets to draw from. So
right, and
they got a great product. It's just so damn expensive.
Yes, well, I get that, and now all of a sudden they're trying to make a SUV to compete with the Chevy Blazer.
3 models they're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. You're either going to be competing with the high-end Porsches and Mercedes of the world, or you're going to be competing with Chevy. I'm just they've got to pick their battle. But that being said, their intention of moving to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and producing there, I think they're looking at making the Lucid Airs there. So they were going to keep making the high-end cars there, and I think they have the market for it there. But I'm just saying. Anyways, Bill, we've gone an hour. We are rambling on. They gotta. We'll order the senior bus to take us back to the home, and
yeah, absolutely.
Anyways, folks, thanks for watching this ramble on. We'll be back on Tuesday, and we'll get back at this. All right.